What's good, people? Welcome to this second episode of Unspoken Podcast. I am Anna Paz, and you were just listening to I Am Khalees and her track Emotional. I will leave details to her music on the description of this podcast. First of all, I would just like to thank everyone who listened to the first episode of Unspoken Podcast, which was really just a little introduction to get you familiar with the format and the premise of this platform. I spoke a little bit about stories and oral traditions, giving some focus on the life of griots and the body as an archive. If you haven't heard that first episode, you can go check it out. It's available on Spotify, YouTube, and you can also subscribe to my Substack page. So as we approach the end of 2024, I just wanted to give a moment of reflection on my biggest takeaway for the year and just share it with you all. There's been a lot of grief, I would say personally, a lot of letting go of ideas, of the world and myself. Death in all sense of that word has been present this year. And with all the events that have been taking place and continue to manifest, I feel that there's been so many revelations of violence and how violence has and continues to permeate our societies, our bodies, and living territories, the lands that we walk on. I realized how desensitized at times I have felt, not just this year, but throughout my life. And I think this is a coping mechanism of pain in a way. And sometimes this feeling of alienation that comes through not knowing what exactly you should be doing or how or who is part of your community to do that with. I don't think there has been one month where we haven't heard about an extreme act of violence, whether it's genocide, abuse, or exploitation. And all of these are constant triggers to the pain that is just underneath. And when you have the possibility to be in your body, and I guess I would say that is a privilege, it's a real eye-opener to see the illusion of what has been upheld for so long, whether it's inside of you or outside. Those constructs begin to crumble, to fall and die. It's hard and it's painful. But how much do we take into account the magnitude of violence we have experienced not only in our lifetime, but over several generations? We all possess the capacity, that violence, that destruction. We possess that capacity at any point. We hold it within us. We were raised by it. I guess that's why Bell Hooks wrote, "My choice to love is a miracle." Being anti-racist or anti-anything, opposed anything that is oppressive is a work that you must do on yourself simultaneously. Otherwise, we will reproduce the same without being aware of it, or think that it is justified because of the pain that we have experienced. It is a work that has not begun with us decolonizing, but a work that realigns us to the process of knowledge that begins from where you are. Knowledge begins from where you are. I'll be reading from Decolonising the Mind by Ngũgĩ wa Thiong'o. I adopted this phrase, knowledge begins from where you are, after hearing the online lecture that he did with the Quantum Biology Laboratory on decolonizing knowledge. In this online lecture, Professor explains the process of colonization and how it shifted the cognitive process of knowledge that should begin from where you are, but rather now it begins from the imperial center to where you are. So this book, Decolonising the Mind, is more of a take on African languages and the deterioration of African languages in favor of European languages like English, French, and Portuguese. So this work was largely inspired by his imprisonment and the time that he had in exile during about 1977. This happened following a production of a controversial play that he created called Nigangika Niedinda, I Will Marry When I Want, when he challenged the authoritarian powers of the ruling government of Kenya at the time. And I'll do an episode where I go more in depth about these particular essays on languages and how languages are really key in constructing culture, values, and memories of the past for a people. But for today, I really want to focus on imperialism and its violence, which I think Professor Thiong'o explains beautifully in this book. And imperialism is essentially the word used to describe the power and influence over territories that have been colonized, the maintaining of values or maintaining of language or policies even after sort of independence. So it's that maintenance of that power, of their influence, essentially. And this didn't just happen by chance. And I do get a bit frustrated when I speak to some individuals who seem to think that our conditions in life have happened only because of some natural progress or evolution, when unfortunately these conditions have been organized, they have been planned. And you can even look it up. Berlin Conference of 1884, where they sat for 3 months, planned and divided Africa in order to shift into this new imperialistic era. So reading from page 3, Thiong'o states, "Imperialism, led by the USA, presents the struggling peoples of the earth and all those calling for peace, democracy, and socialism with the ultimatum: accept theft or death. The oppressed and the exploited of the earth maintain their defiance, liberty from theft. But the biggest weapon wielded and actually daily unleashed by the imperialism against the collective defiance is the cultural bomb. The effect of a cultural bomb is to alienate a people's belief in their names, in their languages, in their environment, in their heritage of struggle, in their unity, in their capacities, and ultimately in themselves. It makes them see their past as one of wasteland, of non-achievement, and it makes them want to distance themselves from that wasteland. It makes them want to identify with that which is furthest removed from themselves. For instance, with other people's languages rather than their own. It makes them identify with that which is decadent and reactionary, all those forces which would only stop their own springs of life. It even plants serious doubts about the moral righteousness of struggle. Possibilities of triumph or victory are seen as remote, ridiculous dreams. The intended results are despair, despondency, and a collective death wish. Amidst this wasteland which it has created, imperialism presents itself as the cure, demands that the dependents sing hymns of praise with the constant refrain, "Theft is holy." I think this is, first of all, beautifully written by Thiong'o. And really, I must say that it actually highlights that he explained in a lecture about the cognitive shift of knowledge. And this center that is no longer your own feeds into that feeling of despair, of alienation, of homelessness, so that in the end you cannot grow against it. You cannot do anything to oppose it. You don't have anywhere to plant your feet, to call home. And if this is the case, how can imperialism ever be the cure? How could it ever assume that it is? How can what is creating the very conditions of violence all of a sudden not be violent, all of a sudden not be exploitative, when it has always intended to be? And when these are the conditions, it is very easy for violence to manifest in different forms. It is also much easier for us to reproduce that violence as if it was ours, our culture, because it has been so heavily imposed on us for several generations. So to some extent, it is a part of our culture, but it is not our centers. Somehow within the culture that we have been birthed in, yes, it is our parent to some extent that has taught us how to either inflict or live with that violence, but it is not our center. Now I'm going to read from page 11 where Thiong'o talks about a personal experience, and he's talking specifically about when he was in school in Kenya. It was after the declaration of a state of emergency over Kenya in 1952 that all the schools run by patriotic nationalists were taken over by the colonial regime and were placed under the district education boards chaired by Englishmen. English became the language of my formal education in Kenya. English became more than a language. It was the language that all the other languages had to bow before. Thus, one of the most humiliating experiences was to be caught speaking Gikuyu in the vicinity of the school. The culprit was given corporal punishment, 3 to 5 strokes of the cane on the bare buttocks, or was made to carry a metal plate around the neck with the inscriptions such as, "I am stupid," or "I am a donkey." Sometimes the culprits were fined money, and they could hardly afford it. And how did the teachers catch the culprits? A button was initially given to one pupil, who was supposed to hand it over to whoever was caught speaking their mother tongue. Whoever had the button at the end of the day would sing who had given it to him, and the ensuing process would bring out all the culprits of the day. Thus, children were turned into witch hunters. In the process, were being taught the lucrative value of being a traitor to one's immediate community. There's 3 things that I really take away from this passage of violence and how it manifests. The first one is the corporal punishment, or the physical violence that is part of our culture, and in my opinion has been adopted in some cases as a means of survival, obviously, but it is a learned behavior, and many of us would believe that it's part of our culture when in fact it is. Any kind of physical violence that occurs with no real rational reason is just an extension of the forceful, domineering control that stems from the behavior of those who wish to oppress us. That in some ways, yes, we've adopted this corporal punishment as a means of survival, to stay in line kind of thing so that you don't get hurt out there. But at the same time, I don't believe that it's actually our culture. The second thing is the reinforcement of humiliation, addressing yourself in a derogative way, or someone else addressing you in a derogative way, which is also a learned behavior. And the third one is turning your back on your community. And ultimately, if you benefit from it, from being a snitch, as they say, it just devalues the integrity of the community and the values that we deem important. In exchange for what? Is it status? Is it money? Is it power? Of course, we have, situations in which telling the truth is necessary. But I think whenever it's in exchange for some kind of financial gain, that is where we lose a bit of integrity and where it actually creates distrust between us. Imperialism has for so long masked itself as a savior or cure, the center. But as this illusion, as it begins to crumble in front of us, it's important that we're not super critical of ourselves. We must meet ourselves where we are with love and humility. We listen, we don't judge. Well, sometimes we obviously listen and we do judge, but with love and humility. And through that, may we remember those who have come before us, those who have lost their lives this year as a result of this continued violence. And however abruptly they may have been taken, may they rest in knowing that their presence continues. It grounds us and gives us strength from below. May we move into 2025 more firmly grounded in this understanding. Knowledge begins from where you are, engaging with the tools, the practices, the spaces, and the communities that pull us gently back to our centers. Thank you for listening. I'll see you on the next episode.
I write it to people, baby. No, I don't believe in white people. I don't believe in black people either, for that matter. But I know the difference between being black and white and at this time. It means that I cannot fool myself about something, but I can fool myself about it if I'm white.
But more white people read your novels, I believe, than black people.
Well, black people may not read them, but they steal them. They sell them hot in bars.
You do spend a long time between novels, why is that?
Well, I'm that kind of writer. There's no answer to that. Some people write. I wish I was George Simenon. Write them in 2 weeks, but I can't. And everybody works the way he can work. I must point out, though, too, that I've been working in the last few years between assassinations. That doesn't make it any easier either. They're killing my friends. As simple as that. And have been all the years that I've been alive. for no reasons which have any validity.
Why don't you just want to get away somewhere and sit down and write a book? Why don't you want to do that?
Because I'm better than that.
But you don't have to do that.
Oh, I do.
So you don't agree then? I mean, when people say, oh, it's okay for him, he's escaped.
What have I escaped? Where, anyway, would I go to escape? To your country? Would I get a political asylum here? Where would a fleeing black man go if he wanted to escape? There may not be, as much humanity in the world as one would like to see, but there is some. There's more than one would think. In any case, if you break faith with what you know, that's a betrayal of many, 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 many people. I may know 6 people, but that's enough. Love has never been a popular movement, and no one's ever wanted really to be free. The world is held together, really it is held together, by the love and the passion of very few people. Otherwise, of course, you can despair. Walk down the street of any city, any afternoon, and look around you. What you got to remember is what you're looking at is also you. Everyone you're looking at is also you. You could be that person. You could be that monster. You could be that cop. And you're to decide in yourself not to be.